couple of reasons that having a program, especially a very effective and highly targeted program, is important. First off, all the challenges we've seen around data in GDPR, CCPA, and others, there's going to be a kind of a big push around that. But right now, brands are really struggling with reciprocity. They're struggling with empathy. They're trying to balance the need to drive revenue, but truly understand their customers in a very unique way. The paradigm has shifted over the last couple of years to those who have a deeper engagement with their customers, and we're seeing those that are doing well, do exceedingly well. One of the big things that we've always talked about is brands struggle with listening to and understanding their customers. And now in this day and age, truly listening to and understanding your customers is going to be more important than ever before.
And I think that there's kind of 4 components to this. So the first part of this is really the ability to talk to a large subset of your customers. So programs are really good at collecting data and collecting customer identity and giving you permission to talk to them. So when there's major changes or disruption in your business, being able to communicate to your customers is really important. So that's the first reason why programs are important. The second part of it is really the ability to access lower cost incentives. So when we think about engaging and retaining customers and actually trying to get them to come back after being in lockdown, after being, not being able to come into stores, for example, discounting is really expensive. So when you have a program, you have status, rewards, you have incentives. Often they are better ways of getting good customer outcomes. The third aspect to it really is the data that you collect through your program. And what that helps you do is understand your customers better and understand your business better. And the reason that's important is, think about it this way: if you have to close all of your stores, then technically everyone has lapsed. So how do you decide where to spend your money? How do you decide how to think about your churn models, your ROI calculations, and also your marketing strategy? So the data asset is the third competitive advantage and value that you get out of the program during these times. And the fourth doesn't apply to everybody, but when you have a currency that you're selling to third parties, often a program can be a source of liquidity. And so we've seen big travel companies, hotels, airlines, etc., actually selling large numbers of points to their partners at a time when they really need cash. So that sort of source of cash through the program is super important, particularly where you've got an airline or a hotel that can't operate or can't fly.
Well, situations like COVID are exactly the reasons why brands should have loyalty programs, because they really help to future-proof your relationships and also protect your brand when the market changes, which clearly it's done significantly and very quickly over the past few months. So consumers are going to continue to spend less in most sectors for the foreseeable future, and any brands, I feel, that are encouraging more spending are going to be poorly perceived by customers. So this is a great opportunity to be focusing on retention, and loyalty programs are obviously all about retention, because they allow brands to have relevant data that companies can use to enhance customer experience, and also give them the means to communicate in a way that's sensitive during these times. So I was looking at a program, Odeon Limitless, in the UK. So they're keeping their members engaged with content, previews, reviews, while their customers can't go to the movies. And they wouldn't be able to do this if they didn't have the stored information on their customers' preferences, etc.
Yeah, so in times like this, brands thrive based on the relationships that they have with their customers. It's really important to meet them where they are with products and experiences and messages that are relevant to their context. So things are different now than they were 3 or 4 months ago, and you have to meet customers where they are. So if the question is whether you have a program or not, it's really easy to view it through the lens of how close are you to your customer. If you know exactly who they are, what they buy, when they buy, then maybe you don't need a program. Lots of B2B businesses with dedicated salespeople have that sort of relationship. But in reality, if you're a consumer business and you can't answer those questions, now is absolutely the right time to think about having a loyalty program, because it can do 2 very important things. 1, getting customers to cross the threshold and create a relationship. And 2, authenticate at every single transaction so you can link their behavior to their identity. Loyalty program can do a great job to give customers a why not to create a relationship, and then of course for continuing one.
I think we did a great job of securing safety. So from the very first moment of COVID-19, we communicate communicated that we are a safe place to come and shop your goods, your food, you can fill up your needs. We had toilet paper, which was in all across Europe a very important and strategic product. We had it all across the situation. So joke aside, from the very, very early moment, we communicated that our employees and our stores are in safe. So we meet with all security regulations from the very first moment. And then we work very hard with our suppliers and with our colleagues to make sure that we could keep this momentum, and we could feed Denmark all across this period. Luckily, as we were one of the first countries went to the lockdown, we are one of the countries currently reopening back. So today is actually the day when all retail outlets could go back to normal operation. So even our big department store is open now, and still the safety is the first priority for us.
I think the pandemic and COVID-19 has been a fabulous case study of what you should do and what you shouldn't do when it comes to operating a program. I've never felt more love from brands that I have really no affinity with, particularly if I look at my email inbox. All of a sudden I've got companies emailing me, telling me how much they care about me when I haven't shopped with them for years. And then you've got other brands actually doing a better job of actually keeping their customers informed, getting the messaging right, actually just being much more service orientated than sort of fake or sales orientated. But I think what it comes down to is being practical and relevant. Nike's done a great job in the US. What they did was they had this whole Play Inside campaign. They made the Nike Training Club app free, and that made it a whole lot easier for their customers and members to be able to access great content around exercising and staying fit and healthy. Medibank in Australia, great Australian health insurance brand, has a Live Better program. They reward customers for being healthy, for staying healthy, for eating healthy. And they've seen a 20% increase in exercise of their members during the lockdown, and a 50% increase in healthy eating, all on the back of their loyalty program. We've also seen companies like eBay who have a program, eBay Plus, and that's a really interesting model. It offers deals, discounts, and free shopping. And when it comes to not being able to visit the shops, that program has really high utility. Some other interesting things that we've seen some of the big hotel chains and airlines selling enormous amounts of points to their partners. And in a couple of cases, American Express has purchased over $1 billion in loyalty points ahead of requiring those, which helps them, effectively with a lower cost incentive for their customers, and it helps the partner in terms of cash flows. The airlines have done some interesting things, and so we've seen here that Virgin and Qantas have shifted their status mechanisms so that they're not penalising customers who can't fly. Qantas has shifted a lot of their focus from flying benefits into shopping benefits, and so they've actually been quite active in encouraging engagement through the program with things that you can do as opposed to things that you can't do. And we've seen Cathay do something interesting, and they're really leveraging this behavioural economic phenomenon called the endowed progress effect. They're actually incentivising customers on a regular basis to keep them engaged in the program and to keep their status ticking over whilst customers can't fly. So trying to keep the customer engaged and feeling like they've got a vested interest in the program.
Yeah, I think that we're all taking our lead from the travel and hospitality business. Just like a lot of things in the loyalty business, they're the biggest, oldest, most established, and most profitable programs, so we're following their lead. What we've seen there is that the airline and hotels have taken the next right step in meeting their customers where they are, and what they did was to extend timelines for status qualification as well as expiration. In our business, we have a really important client, Pizza Hut, who took that cue and extended the period for points expiration in the same vein, and we've gotten really positive feedback from their customers. I think at the end of the day, we just need to be very empathetic and meet customers where they are in this context that is so very different.
Yeah, there are loads of brands around the world. It's been so interesting to see which brands have been able to pick up. And I think those that are super organized were able to pivot really quickly. And other brands that were in the early stages with their loyalty have struggled a lot more. I've seen companies using four main different ways of engaging their customers. So using their existing assets for good. I think what Starbucks has done by offering free coffee to frontline responders, and Four Seasons hotels providing free rooms for coronavirus doctors, I believe. These brands have the product, they can't sell them. So they're using it to build those relationships now for when things get back to normal. Secondly, brands that have changed the rules to their program. So any companies such as Maya here in Australia, they have a popular birthday gift card that expires quite quickly. They've extended that expiry date. And BP Me, which are encouraging its members to donate their points to help others, and also donating the same amount of monetary amount, which I think is great. One that I love, which I think will be able to continue after COVID, are brands that are really trying to deepen those relationships and using digital and online to do it. So Lululemon, for instance, are offering online workout classes to keep its members engaged. And in fact, I've been doing online PT classes and involving children and family members from around the world. And the personal trainer told us, we can go back now to the park. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. This is a great way for me to see my sister who lives in Switzerland, for instance.
One of the things I've seen from a number of brands that are doing some unique things, they're online is obviously easier right now. If you're traditionally kind of a web-based property, it's easier. But a lot of these retailers that have been primarily traffic-driven, in-store traffic-driven, like DSW and Famous Footwear, they've done a really unique job of not only conveying some of the challenges they're putting they're addressing from safety, security, but they're driving a behavior shift, getting people who traditionally have been 80, 90% plus in store. They're getting that shift in behavior, which is really unique and very powerful just to listen to some of the things that they're doing. It's very interesting, and I think those two have done a really unique job. I think some of the ones that haven't done a good job, and it's some of the online retailers who are very, very focused on discount and just pushing sales in regard to in disregard actually to the customers. And you saw a huge spike obviously online, but you see the messages are just constant discounting. And I think they're denigrating the brand with regard to pushing maybe non-essential or non-needed products during this time. And another group that's done an amazing job is Home Depot. I think Home Depot has done a really good job leveraging their customer data, their CRM data, and with the realization that not all of the use from Home Depot may be essential, but the mental health pieces that I've seen that they've addressed, I think they're doing a really good job with regard to truly engaging the customers, listening to them, and with what they want, which is good to see.
Yeah, I think is the tempo, how fast we can communicate with our customer. That's going to make the biggest difference, or already made the biggest difference. So, as I mentioned, we are very much on printed leaflet at the moment, where the lead time is about 6 weeks. So you can imagine how we could communicate with the 6 weeks lead time in printed leaflet. So, in Denmark, the whole COVID situation basically came in hours. So we had basically no plan, no chance to react as effective as we wanted. This application, if 50% or more of our customer going to be a loyal member, then we can communicate with them in an hour, with an hour of lead time. So that's the biggest advantage.
There's a couple of things I think having a well-suited and targeted customer loyalty program and approach is we talked a little bit about reciprocity, but permission is going to be a big thing going forward. So having that explicit permission to market to the customers, but again, understanding what the customers want and being able to listen to and understand them, making sure you have that right product, the right time, with the right message, is going to be more important than ever before. And one of the biggest challenges we continue to see, especially from our brand partners who are members of Loyalty 360, is that challenge around personalization, segmentation, cadence management. there's just a lot of consternation right now, how to market to, how to message, how do I get to zero-party data that can really help me enhance the efficacy of what we're doing from a customer loyalty perspective. So, having a program that works very well, that is focused on truly engaging the customers and not just, wordsmithing, but truly understanding the customers is going to be more important than ever before, especially during this recovery, as there's going to be a huge balance that brands have to navigate.
Well, most brands have face-to-face contact normally with their customers, and during this lockdown phase, they just don't have that anymore. And if they don't have a program, they can lose contact with their customers really easily during these times, and especially if they don't have a strong bond outside of that loyalty program. So customers who are part of a loyalty program are much more engaged, and this gives brands a real competitive advantage as far as I'm concerned. We have a very strong loyalty program here in Australia from Nando's. I believe you have Nando's in the US and all around the world, but they've got a really engaged membership here and a terrific database. So they went out really early to their members and asked them to share their feedback and identify industries they believe should be included in their promotion, which is a 50% discount deal. And they got 7,000 suggestions within the week. So they then spread the word of their promotion via email, which obviously they wouldn't have had in that sort of environment without their loyalty program. And they got 600,000 donations for Nando's meals to those essential workers around Australia. So that sort of brand building and loyalty that they've been able to develop during this time is just been remarkable.
So when we think about competitive advantage, I think it's important that we think about this in the context of a brand's competitors. So what is it that you've got that gives you an advantage over your competitors? Just having a program often isn't enough. In many consumer sectors, loyalty programs are pervasive across multiple brands. So it's about how do you make your program better than your competitors? And so I think that's really important from a competitive advantage standpoint. And if you've got a good program and it's working well, some of the advantage that you get out of them include a defense against switching. And when we think about switching is really that thing that happens when we lose a customer or we lose part of the value of the customer. And what we know through all of our analysis is that switching is most likely to happen during significant life events. Things like you get married, you get divorced, you get a new job, you have a baby, you go to university, you leave university, you enter a pandemic, you have to work from home, you have to work with your wife all the time, you have to homeschool your kids. All these major life events actually force us often to switch brands, and that's because our needs change. So having a good loyalty program actually acts as a defense against switching, because we can start to predict who's likely to switch and we can do something about it. The second aspect to this is really how we think about allocating our marketing investment. And so when we think about the challenges that brands have gone through during the pandemic, generally speaking, people will have lower revenues and less profit. And so it becomes tough to think about where we spend our money on customers when we can reopen and we can start trading again. And so programs become really important ways of thinking about how we allocate that marketing investment. And so we can't just spend money and give big rewards to everybody. So it allows us to make the right decisions around where we can get the best ROI on our marketing spend. I think the third aspect to it is about customer retention. And so this ties back to this whole question around switching. Programs do their best job at retaining customers. Yes, they can help you acquire if they're good, and they can in some cases help you deliver bigger baskets, but ultimately they're about retaining customers. And so again, I think during a pandemic, you could argue that most customers have lapsed because they've had to, other than maybe grocery stores and pharmacy, etc. So competitive advantage comes through making your program do a better job of retaining your customers and getting them back than your competitor.
Yeah, sure thing. So first of all, there's a cost advantage. In a bull market, it's really easy with all boats rising. It's really easy to throw around some big numbers at media. But in a down market where we are now, and we're probably headed even lower, you need to do more and you need to do it differently. You need to get closer to your customers. Second of all, we've been talking about COVID as the greatest accelerant of digital transformation ever. So when we look at some industries like grocery, where users have been reluctant to adopt digital ordering solutions, they're now forced to by the environment. And those are all new relationships that need nurturing and cultivation. Finally, it's all about creating intimacy with the data. How else might you know that somebody's lost their job or changed their living situation if you can't discern those facts from customer level data? So I think that at the end of the day, empathy is our key. Empathy is our superpower to emergence, and loyalty is the best way to create intimacy and relevancy with consumers as we emerge.
I think it really depends on the industry that you're in. If you're one of the industries that have been severely affected, such as bars or restaurants, airlines, beauticians, event centres, etc., it's really much better to be spending your time at the moment on solid strategy development and finding innovative ways to connect and reward customers within the existing frameworks. You know, trying to persuade senior management to spend money on loyalty programs at the moment when they can't pay their suppliers and their staff is not going to lead to a successful outcome for anyone. However, in industries that are doing really well, such as grocery or construction, and some strange niche retail industries like bedding, apparently, this is a great time to start a new program or revitalize an existing program, because consultants and vendors are likely to be less busy for the next few months as projects are put on hold. So now's a great time to get their full attention and some really sharp pricing. That's my experience that I'm seeing at the moment.
Well, we all know, and there's kind of an array of stats out there with regard to an effective loyalty program, you know, the cost of acquisition, the cost of retention. I think post-COVID, it's going to be more impactful to have those quote unquote raving fans, right? To have that Pareto principle, have that 20% who will truly engage with you, who won't go anywhere else, right? That you get a larger share of that wallet. Again, that's based on having that communication, that reciprocity with the customer, which is very hard for a lot of brands to do. I think having a customer loyalty program that is all-encompassing, that's comprehensive in nature, that looks at all facets from the customer experience to the gamification to using that zero-party data. The more data you have, and the more you can get them involved in kind of that reciprocal relationship, it's going to be much more important going forward. And the budgets are going to change, right? You and I both know a lot of kind of the programs that we're going to launch, American Eagle, a number of others who had programs that were going to be in market. We've kind of put a hold on those right now. They'll be launching soon. But I think the justification and what we're seeing for the loyalty program is going to focus on the ability to drive that personalization, to drive that segmentation, and then to manage the cadence with the customers in a very empathetic manner. And I think that's what we're going to see is the budgets are going to be there. They're going to have to drive provable ROI, but it's the personalization pieces that everyone's talked about for the last couple of years are going to be front and center.
So when we think about budget, it matters as much now as it does in normal business times. The reality is that as a program owner or a program operator, you should always be able to articulate the value that your program's delivering. And good programs deliver positive ROI. And so whether that's how we think about using the program to respond to a downturn, or in a general sense, how we think about it as an asset in the business, we should always think about getting as optimized returns out of our program as possible. And that means spending the company's money wisely, and really rewarding and incentivizing the right behaviors from a customer perspective. But I think there is an opportunity right now to rethink our programs. There's been a lot of focus on how we react to the pandemic. And what that means is that we've had to change programs, we've had to cut costs in some instances, we've had to change messaging, we've had to turn off churn models and AR models that have been disrupted by this major change in consumer behavior. But as we come out of it, I think brands really need to think about what they stand for. And so when we think about loyalty investments and programs, I think what's really important is making sure you're clear on what you stand for and really what you want the program to do. And the challenge comes when brands don't have that clarity, and they get caught in this vortex of complacency and indecision, trying to be everything to everybody, and they end up being nothing to nobody. And so we need to think about, how does the program fit within our broader customer strategy, and really what do we want it to stand for? Is it about the best rewards? Is it about reinforcing other parts of the brand CVP? Is it about being the most innovative? Is it about doing as best as you can to try and really lock that customer in? Things like subscription-based models and other mechanisms to do that. So there is an opportunity while customers have been focused on other things and not actually purchasing like they normally would, to really think about what do we want our program to stand for? How do we think about those loyalty investments to make that program land as best as possible for the priority customer segments that you're going after, for the behaviours that you're going after? I think most importantly, for the way in which you want it to support the overall brand messaging and positioning that the company is looking to pursue.
Yeah, let's keep it simple. How many customers do you have direct relationships with? Can you measure it? Can you count them? And can you look at their activity and measure that as a meaningful part of your business? If you don't have enough, get more. Second, how much is that relationship worth, measured in frequency and average order value? So if your customers are buying 2 times a year at $15 per transaction, it's $30. Your business might be quite different, but you need to quantify it at the customer level, not at the market level or the business unit level. Third, what is the specific behavior change that could create the most value for your customers? So it doesn't have to be the proverbial one more transaction. In times like this, it could be something different. It could be like trying curbside service for the first time, or downloading an app for online ordering, or some other digital activity, again, crossing that threshold to creating a relationship that allows the data to flow both ways. So what is the specific behavior change that can create the most value for your business? Once you know the value of that behavior change, you can compare that to the cost of designing and installing a program. So you can take 10 million customers and get 1 more transaction and compare that cost to the cost of launching a program. Or in today's environment, what is the value of having 300,000 people download the app? Finally, I think we at T3, we've had a lot of success thinking about these things from a product perspective. So what is an MVP? What is a measurable, testable, minimally viable product that you can launch in the marketplace and get reactions from consumers? And then once you've done that, what's the feature backlog? How can we add more features and measure the performance of those features to get in front of more users and drive the business conversation in another direction? It doesn't have to be a great, big, complicated, and expensive project. Start with an MVP and layer your features after that.
It's the best time to do this. And it doesn't necessarily take a complete, rip and replace of the program either. It's working with maybe an ancillary technology, kind of a value-added service provider that can take the disparate data sources, that can look at the automation and communication channels you have and really make them more effective. And working with organizations that can help simplify the data sets as well. There's such an arcane process with regard to so much data, where a lot of it's obtuse. It doesn't add value, it doesn't drive engagement. So creating some simplicity in your marketing messages and not necessarily having to rip and replace, but working with a good consultant or kind of a series of technologies that can help simplify the customer loyalty approach is more important than ever before. So I think those who have programs that are not meeting their numbers, that aren't driving the ROI, that aren't engaging, right? It's the best time to redo them, to make them more engaging.
I think the biggest change is going to be the loyalty program in terms of promo and in terms of communication. So we have a very, very strong ambition to at least recruit 50% of our customers. So aim for a 50% sales penetration, which obviously going to change the way how we are promoting the products, how we are communicating with our customers, and mid and long term, the complete media mix in our organization.
Well, I'll tell them the same thing that I would normally tell them to focus on. But I do think that a major event such as what we're seeing at the moment, which is caused by an external thing that really we have no control over, this is a great time to be reevaluating your business strategy and adapt to this new norm. And I think consumers are very receptive to those changes and are appreciating brands that are making the effort to do it. You know, the world that we knew 3 months ago is unlikely to ever return to its former state. So a rebirth for the program at the moment is great. So, I mean, things, you know, we always say the same things, but focusing on your strategy, you know, make sure you're analyzing your customer base, segmenting it in new ways now, because new segments are emerging. Look at your program structure, providing new and different rewards and benefits relevant to your members' lives, focusing on clear communication with a very sensitive tone. It's almost better at the moment to do nothing rather than to do something that's going to upset your customers, because if they can't buy anything and they don't have jobs, trying to promote things that they're not interested in is just not going to work.
And if we look at the marketplace, the evidence suggests that there's actually been less activity during the pandemic around programs, albeit it's only been a few months, so it's only a fairly short kind of sample window. In Australia, we've seen some interesting activity. We've seen Qantas being quite active with enhancements to their program, and we've seen some other relaunches and improvements. That said, I think philosophically, we believe now is the time to be working on your improvements, working on those enhancements, making those really tough decisions around how you're going to improve and enhance and reinvigorate your program. But it feels like the time to be actually making noise in the market is about to hit. It's that time when customers and people in general go from focusing on things other than shopping and traveling and all those great consumer vices, things like what to do with the kids and, you know, are we going to be safe and healthy? I think now that we're coming out of this, I think now's the time to really be thinking about how you land those improvements with the customer. And so hopefully you've been really busy whilst everyone's been working from home, doing all of that great internal work that's required to reshape and relaunch your proposition. Because as we know, those things take time. But if you've done that well, it really feels like the recovery phase is going to be the best time to really capture the customer's attention with improvements and new aspects to your program. And we expect to see some of that. I think that part of it will be taking the opportunity to simplify the proposition. I think a lot of programs are going to have to recalibrate their earned thresholds and their earn structures. So if you think about the gold gradient effect, customers actually work harder the closer they get to a reward. Well, if they've not been able to spend for a few months, if they've actually been impacted in terms of their spending firepower, then a lot of programs are going to have to become richer effectively to make the rewards more attainable. So I think we're going to go into a really exciting period of relaunch and reinvigoration, and fully expect that a lot of loyalty practitioners have been quite busy during this quiet period working through all those complications.
In this environment, if we've learned anything from COVID, it's that today, what we have today isn't going to be what we have tomorrow. So it's really important to be flexible and adapt. In that environment, it's really important to have solutions that allow you to do that. And one of the things I love about working with Cheetah is the experiences platform, where you have a very low threshold for entry to start a relationship, and then maybe you can manage it over time and grow it into something that could be a more formal loyalty program. We always like to think about starting with an MVP and then iterating with a set of features in order to get to the desired business outcome, which is never exactly what you want today. It's going to be what you want tomorrow.